If you've ever held a coin that felt just a little different in your hand, heavier somehow, not in weight but in presence, you'll understand the fascination collectors have with certain pieces of American currency. And today, we're diving into one of those coins. A coin that, at first glance, might seem ordinary, just another modern $half tucked away in a drawer or passed around in loose change. But the truth hides in the details, and the details behind the 1982 Kennedy $half minted in Denver tell a story that most casual collectors never hear, and most Americans never learned. It's a story of change, of oversight, of scarcity where none was expected, and of a coin whose value quietly climbed into the triple digits while almost nobody was watching. To appreciate what makes this 1982 Kennedy $half so fascinating, we first have to step back into the world of early 1980s America. Inflation was still echoing from the previous decade, interest rates were high, unemployment was lingering, and the country was adjusting to a new era of economics under President Ronald Reagan. For the U.S. Mint, it was also a time of transition, not only economically but in the way coins were produced, who they were made for, and how the public interacted with physical currency. By 1982, something unusual was happening. Fewer people were using $half in circulation. The 50-cent piece, once a common sight in pockets and registers, was slowly fading from daily commerce, replaced by bills, quarters, and eventually debit cards. As a result, $half were minted in smaller numbers, and many Americans barely noticed they even existed. But one thing that made 1982 stand out in the minting world was a decision that appears small on paper yet created one of the most interesting twists in modern coin collecting. The U.S. Mint decided not to produce mint sets that year. Mint sets, carefully prepared, government-issued sets of uncirculated coins, were a key source for collectors looking for pristine examples of each year's coinage. Without those sets, collectors had far fewer chances to obtain high-grade versions of coins from 1982. And this one administrative choice would make the 1982 Kennedy $half far rarer in top condition than anyone at the time could have predicted. The Kennedy $half has always been one of the most recognizable coins in modern U.S. history. Its creation was a direct response to national tragedy. After the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in 1963, the urgency to commemorate him on circulating currency was overwhelming. Within months, the Franklin $half was replaced, and Kennedy's profile took its place. Sculptor Gilroy Roberts crafted the obverse portrait, strong, youthful, noble, and Frank Gasparo designed the presidential seal on the reverse, capturing the spirit of the nation at a moment when Americans needed a symbol of unity and hope. By 1982, the design had become familiar, almost comforting. But like all familiar things, sometimes its importance went unnoticed. Look closely at a 1982 Kennedy $half, though, and you'll spot subtle details that define its character. The mint mark, D, sits just beside Kennedy's portrait, identifying it as a product of the Denver Mint. The coin is struck in a copper-nickel-clad composition, standard for circulating $half since the removal of silver after 1970. It has that distinctive ring when dropped, sharper than older silver coins, but still solid, substantial. The relief of Kennedy's hair, the lettering around the rim, the eagle clutching arrows and an olive branch on the reverse, each element tells a story of American minting tradition. In many ways, it represents a final chapter in an era when $half still mattered, even if fewer people used them. But what truly transforms this coin from ordinary to extraordinary is the matter of condition. Because there were no official mint sets, collectors today rely on what they call bank-wrapped rolls, uncirculated coins that were stored away by chance rather than intention. The problem is that even those rolls weren't always protected from marks, scratches, or abrasions. The machinery that loads the coins, the friction of metal against metal, the pressure of packaging, every step introduced wear. The result? High-grade examples of the 1982 Kennedy $half became unexpectedly rare. So whether you're a casual collector, a seasoned numismatist, or someone just curious about coins, keep your eyes open. Check your change. Sort through those old jars. Look at the mint marks. You never know when a small piece of history, struck more than 4 decades ago, might be hiding right in front of you. And with all that said, here's the moment you've been waiting for. The 1982 D. Kennedy $50, when found in exceptional, high-grade mint state condition, has reached an impressive value of $151,851 for a coin that once jingled around as ordinary pocket change. A coin that almost nobody saved. A coin born of a year when the mint made a decision that would unknowingly shape its future rarity. And that is the kind of story that keeps coin collecting alive: history, mystery, and the thrill of discovery, all wrapped in one small piece of American metal. The story of the 1973 Kennedy $50 begins long before the year 1973. In fact, it begins on a tragic day in November of 1963, when the United States changed forever. The assassination of President John F. Kennedy shocked every corner of the nation, leaving Americans searching for a way to honor the young, charismatic leader whose life had been cut short. Almost immediately, discussions began about placing Kennedy's image on a coin, a permanent tribute that Americans would carry in their pockets every day. By early 1964, the decision was finalized. The $50 would bear Kennedy's likeness. That moment became the start of one of the most beloved coin series in American numismatics. The 1973 Kennedy $50 occupies a unique place in the series because, although millions were minted, they weren't released for general circulation. That's right, the 1973 $50 wasn't intended to appear in everyday pocket change. Most Americans never touched one of these coins in their everyday lives. Instead, the coins were reserved for collectors and placed into mint sets and proof sets. That factor alone makes the 1973 edition more intriguing. Many coins from the early 1970s were widely circulated, showing heavy wear over time, but the 1973 $50 is different, preserved, protected, and often kept untouched by collectors who understood its significance. But to truly appreciate this coin, you need to understand the artistry behind it. On the obverse, or front side, the coin features the famous right-facing portrait of John F. Kennedy designed by Gilroy Roberts. The portrait captures Kennedy with a confident expression, his hair swept back, giving him a sense of determination fitting for a president who represented youth, optimism, and energy. Roberts designed this portrait under emotional circumstances, immediately following Kennedy's assassination, and he worked closely with Jacqueline Kennedy to ensure the design captured her husband's spirit. Even a decade later, in 1973, the portrait remained deeply meaningful, reminding Americans of Kennedy's legacy. On the reverse of the coin, Frank Gasparo's design features the presidential seal, an eagle with wings outstretched, clutching olive branches and arrows, surrounded by a ring of stars. It's a design that speaks of strength, unity, and resilience. When you hold a 1973 Kennedy $50, you're not just holding metal, you're holding symbols chosen to represent the heart of the nation. Part of the fascination with the 1973 Kennedy $50 also comes from its place in American culture. Throughout the 1970s, the $50 had an odd presence in American life. It was well known, thanks to its connection to President Kennedy, yet it wasn't widely used in day-to-day transactions. Many Americans preferred quarters, nickels, and dimes, leaving the $50 more of a novelty than a necessity. Because of that, Kennedy $50 became popular holiday gifts, collector items, and pocket keepsakes. Parents often bought them for their children's collections. Grandparents would tuck them away for safekeeping. The coins became symbols of pride and remembrance rather than commerce. As collectors study the 1973 $50, they often look for subtle variations and errors that may add to the coin's desirability. While this year doesn't boast the kind of famous errors seen in other series, minor striking issues such as double die obverse, weak strikes, or planchet flaws can exist. These variations can create excitement, drawing collectors who love the challenge of finding a rarity hidden within a sea of otherwise normal pieces. The story of the 1973 Kennedy $50 is more than just a numismatic timeline. It's also a cultural reflection. People wanted stability, something familiar to hold on to. For many, Kennedy's image provided exactly that. Maybe it was a gift on a birthday, or a coin discovered in an old drawer decades later. These coins bridge generations, connecting people to memories of loved ones and moments in time. The 1973 Kennedy half-dollar's value depends heavily on its condition and mint mark. Lower-grade pieces may not be worth much beyond face value, but high-grade coins, especially those graded by professional services, can command strong prices. Proof coins with deep cameo contrast are especially sought after, and mint-state coins at the top of the scale are rarer than you might think. Collectors love the coin not just for what it is, but for what it represents. And now, for the big reveal, the value you've been waiting for. A pristine, highly desirable example of the 1973 Kennedy half-dollar can reach a surprising price, and in today's collector market, the value for an exceptional piece reaches an impressive $110. It's a number that reflects not just rarity or metal content, but the enduring fascination with a coin that carries so much American history and emotion. For many collectors, the 1973 Kennedy half-dollar is far more than a piece of currency. It's a keepsake, a reminder, and a tribute all in one, making its value not just measurable in dollars, but in meaning.